Hi guys, welcome back to the channel, and today we're going to do the NFL review of week number 2. So without further ado, let's go ahead and start off with our Thursday night primetime game, the Giants and football team. As you can see, the football team won on a game-winning field goal, where Heineke's had 336 yards for 2 touchdowns and an interception. Gibson had 69 yards. J.D. McKissick had a touchdown. McLaurin had 11 receptions for 170 yards and a touchdown. The football team, Jonathan Allen had 2 sacks, along with Kendall Fuller, Montez Sweat. They also had sacks in that game. And looking at the Giants, Jones went 22 for 32, 249 yards and a touchdown. He also had 95 yards and a rushing touchdown. Barkley had a 41-yard carry, and he, along with 57 yards to go with that. Sterling Shepard had 9 receptions for 94 yards. Darius Slayton caught a touchdown. In their defense, Blake Martinez had 12 tackles, along with Aziz Ojulari, who had a sack. And looking at this team, I don't think it was Daniel Jones' fault. I think the people around him were the problem around here. Well, the football team, I think they could be a team to watch. I don't know if they can stay consistent. I think I can consider them a team to watch in the NFL. Well, looking at our next game, the Bears and the Bengals. Joe Burrow didn't have a good game. 19 for 30, 207 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 3 interceptions. He was sacked 4 times. Mixon had 69 yards. Tyler Boyd, 73 yards. T. Higgins, 60 yards and a touchdown. Chase, 54 yards and a touchdown. I mean, he's still being a consistent player in the game. And looking at our sacks, Trey Hendrickson has a sack and a half. DJ Reader has a sack, and Sam Hubert also shared a sack. And Logan Wilson also had an interception. So, there you go. Now look at the Bears. Andy Dalton went 9 of 11 for 56 yards and a touchdown. While Fields, the people who say who should be starting, went 6 of 13 for 60 yards and an interception. Montgomery had 61 yards. Darnell Mooney had a breakout game, 6 receptions for 66 yards. Allen Robinson caught a touchdown. And looking at the defense, Roquan Smith, 8 tackles for a sack and a pick 6, along with Angelo Blackson and Jalen Johnson. We also had Bilal Nichols, Robert Quinn, and Khalil Mack also getting sacks. So looking at this, I think these two really performed really sloppy in this game. I really didn't expect much for this team. Now, for our next game, the Texans and Browns. I mean, Tyrod Taylor looked like he was having a good game until he had that injury. Then Davis Mills, the rookie out of Stanford, came in the game. He went 8 for 1,802 yards, a touchdown, and an interception. That wasn't really great of a debut. Mark Ingram, 41 yards. Brandon Cooks was looking like one of the more underrated wide receivers in the league with 9 receptions, 78 yards, and a touchdown. Philip Lindsay also caught a touchdown, but that was for 22 yards. And looking at his defense, Camus Gregoire Hill had 9 tackles for a sack. And Jacob Martin also had a sack, and Justin Reed also had an interception. While the Browns, Baker Mayfield went 19 for 21, 213 yards, a touchdown, and an interception. Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt, 95 yards, 51 yards, with Chubb getting a touchdown. Demetric Felton was the player of the game, wide receiver of the game, with 51 receptions and a touchdown, while their leading wide receiver, Landry, went out with an injury with only 9 yards. And look at our defense. Grant Delpit got sacked, which was the only sack of the game, and Malcolm Smith also got an interception. So looking at that, the Browns, I mean, they're still going to be like the best team in the AFC North or in the AFC in total. While the Texans, I mean, that with Tyrod Taylor being out for a few games, I think that their win over the Jaguars is still going to be the only win they're going to get this season. We'll have to see. The Rams and the Colts. Matthew Stafford had a great game, 19 for 30, 278 yards, 2 touchdowns and an interception. Henderson, 53 yards and a touchdown, along with Michelle, who had 46 yards. Cup had 9 receptions, 160 yards and 2 touchdowns. Maybe he could be considered a top 10 wide receiver in the league. Along with Robert Woods had 5 receptions for 64 yards. And looking at the defense, Sebastian Joseph Day had a tackle. Sack. Taylor Rapp also had Taylor Rapp and Greg Gaines also shared a sack, and Leonard Floyd also had a sack, along with Ramsey who got the game-winning interception. Carson Wentz went 20 for 31 yards for 247 yards for a touchdown and interception, and who went on to be substituted for Jacob Eason, who had two completions for 5 yards for 25 yard and a game-losing interception. Taylor, who was a rookie star past season, only had 51 yards. I mean, they went up against one of the best defenses in the league. I really can't blame him. But Michael Pittman had 8 receptions for 123 yards. Like, that was a really great game for for a wide receiver that hasn't talked about a lot. Zach Pascal, 5 receptions. He also got a touchdown in that game. Looking at the defense, Al Quadin Muhammad was the only player to get a sack. And looking at this team, the Rams are still looking like top contenders for the playoffs. While the Colts, I don't know how they're going to turn out. So we'll have to see how they'll turn out. Now for our next game, the Bills and Dolphins. Tua Tagovailoa came out of that game. He only had 13 yards. While Brissett, he didn't really have a great game. He only had 169 yards and an interception. And their rushing core couldn't save them either. I mean, Jalen Waddle had a good game, but that's the best I could say about their offense with 48 yards. And Emmanuel Ogbah and Andrew Van Ginkel also shared sacks. But the Bills, they look like the Bills that I assumed they would be last week. Singletary had 82 yards and a touchdown. Josh Allen, 179 yards, 2 touchdowns and an interception. Stephon Diggs had 4 receptions for 60 yards and a touchdown, along with Dawson Knox, who also had a touchdown. Look at all the players who got that. Greg Rousseau, Matt Milano, Micah Hyde, Taron Johnson, and Justin Zimmer all shared sacks, with Rousseau getting 2 of them, along with Levi Wallace getting an interception, and Xavier Howard also getting an interception. I mean, the Dolphins, Tua Tagovailoa may be out for a while, so we don't know how they're going to turn out without their quarterback, and see how Jacoby Brissett might turn out. While the Bills, if they can keep this up, they can still be Super Bowl contenders. I mean, last week was like some kind of trap game against the Steelers. I mean, that happens a lot of times. But moving on. Sorry, guys. The Patriots and the Jets. Mac Jones we got to talk about the Jets. First of all, Zach Wilson, 4 interceptions. Yeah. Michael Carter and Ty Johnson both have 50 yards. That's the best I can say about their offense. I mean, Braxton Berrios had 7 receptions for 73 yards. Elijah Moore, 47 yards as a rookie. I mean, that's the only bright spots I can say about this team. I mean, Marcus May, John Franklin Myers, and John Rankins had sacks, while C.J. Mosley had 10 tackles, looking like his old self in the Ravens. While the Patriots, Mac Jones was 22 for 30 for 186 yards. Damian Harris had 16 yards for a touchdown. James White also caught a touchdown. While he also was the leading receiver for the Patriots for 45 yards. While looking at their defense, Carl Davis and Matt Judon also had sacks, while Josh Uche had 2 sacks in the game. While the people who got interceptions were J.C. Jackson with 2, Devin McCourty and Adrian Phillips also got 1 each. I mean, the Patriots are looking like one of the more underrated teams in the NFL. I mean, Mac Jones could be the offensive rookie of the year. Well, the Jets, they're still struggling to develop rookies. We'll have to see how. We'll see how. Now, for our next game, the 49ers and the Eagles, Garoppolo went 22 of 30 for a touchdown. Hurts 12 for 23. One of those touchdowns was to Juwan Jennings. Deebo Samuel had 93 yards. That's really well for him. Nick Bosa, 2 sacks. The only 2 sacks for the 49ers. Great coming back play game. Jalen Hurts had 190 yards, along with 82 yards and a touchdown. I mean, he was fine for that game. Quez Watkins had 2 receptions for 117 yards. Devontae Smith, 2 receptions for 16 yards. I mean, he was going up against one of the better defenses in the league. I don't blame him. I mean, there were 3 players who had tackles, above 10 tackles. Alex Singleton, Eric Wilson, Anthony Harris. Well, not a single player got a sack. I mean, the Eagles game against the Falcons last week may have been their only bright spot. It may have been Jalen Hurts' best game. I don't know how that'll turn out. I mean, 49ers, as long as they stay healthy, which their running backs haven't been able to do, well, they may still be Super Bowl contenders. Now, the Raiders and the Steelers. I mean, the Raiders are surprising everyone. Derek Carr, 380 yards and 2 touchdowns, along with Henry Ruggs with 5 receptions and 13 yards and a touchdown, along with Foster Moreau, who got a touchdown. Darren Waller, Hunter Renfrow, both about 50 yards, 65 and 57 respectively. Solomon Thomas looking like the player he would have been, looking like he was fourth, third overall pick with 2 sacks. And Trevon Mullen got an interception, which is great for him. Roethlisberger, 295 yards and a touchdown. Najee Harris, the rookie, 138 yards. Deontay Johnson had 105 yards. Claypool with 70 yards. And looking at their defense, Watt and Ingram had sacks. I mean, the Steelers maybe I mean, their win against the Bills may be their only bright spot this game. While the Raiders, they could be Super Bowl contenders if they can still keep this up. I mean, well, let's see. No, I mean, the Raiders are really surprising everyone. Speaking of surprises, and not in a good way, the Winston and the Saints. Famous Jameis Turnover Bakery is back in action with 11 completions, 111 yards, and 2 interceptions. The offense. The offense is not looking that well. I mean, the Panthers, on the other hand, Peyton Turner and Bradley Roby had sacks, and Malcolm Roach got an interception. Now, going on to Panthers, Darnold, I don't think he was. He may not have been the problem in New York. I think it was the Jets who screwed him over. I mean, he had 305 yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception. McCaffrey, 72 yards and a touchdown, along with 65 receiving yards. DJ Moore had 79 receiving yards and a touchdown. Brendan Zylstra had a touchdown in that game as well. And a lot of players got sacks on Winston, Brian Burns, DeQuan Jones, Hassan Reddick, and Morgan Fox to be exact. Along with Justin Boers and the rookie J.C. Horn getting his first NFL career interception. I mean, the Panthers are definitely looking like underdogs for the Super Bowl, while the Saints, that could be their last. I feel like their game against the Saints would have been fine. Their game against the Packers might have been a fluke. Speaking of flukes, the Jaguars and the Broncos. The Jags, Trevor Lawrence is still struggling, 14 for 33, a touchdown and 2 interceptions. The only touchdown coming to Marvin Jones, who got 55 yards. James Robinson isn't used by Urban Meyer. He's trying to ruin his career. Bridgewater, 328 yards and 2 touchdowns. Really having revival in this season. Javonte Williams with 64 yards. Cortland's 2 of those touchdowns came from Tim Patrick and Noah Fant. And Cortland's son had a game that game. 9 receptions, 159 yards. And looking at their defense, Von Miller had a sack. And Kareem Jackson and Patrick Surtain, the second, had interceptions. Surtain's first career interceptions. Jamal Agnew did have a kickoff return for a touchdown, but that's all I can say. Josh Allen and Adam Gotsis had sacks. Looking at this team, the Broncos, they could revitalize a career in the Jaguars. I think they're on their way to break the NFL losing streak record set by the Buccaneers by 76. They only need 9 more games. Now for our next game, the Cardinals and the Vikings. Kyler Murray is still looking like an MVP candidate with 400 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions, along with 31 rushing yards and a touchdown. So that's 4 total touchdowns. And looking at there, Rondale Moore, the rookie, had a great game. 114 yards and a touchdown. Max Williams, 94 yards with 7 receptions. Christian Kirk with 65 yards and 3 receptions. And DeAndre Hopkins with 54 yards and 4 receptions with AJ Green getting a touchdown, his first in Arizona. Rondale Moore, his first in his season. And DeAndre Hopkins with the touchdown. In their defense, Buda Baker had 8 tackles. Great job by him. Along with Marcus Golden with their interception. Looking at the Vikings, Cousins, 244 yards, 3 touchdowns. Dalvin Cook, 131 yards. Great game there. KJ Osborne, 91 yards and touchdown with 5 receptions. Thielen and Jefferson also got touchdowns, which was good for them in their defense. Eric Kendricks had 11 tackles. Daniel Hunter had 3 sacks, along with Nick Vigil and Xavier Woods, who also had interceptions, with Vigil getting a pick 6 for 38 yards. The Vikings, I say they might make the playoffs, but looking at that, I don't think it's gonna happen. The Cardinals, they're looking like one more underrated team. Kyler Murray's definitely looking like an MVP caliber quarterback, and we'll have to see how they'll turn out in their next game. Now the Buccaneers and the Falcons, Brady is still looking like his prime self. 5 touchdowns on 276 yards. 2 of them came to Gronkowski, who had 39 yards. 2 of them came from Evans, who had 75 yards. Chris Godwin had 62 yards and a touchdown. Matt Ryan, 2 touchdowns and 3 interceptions. Now looking like it's real swell. Rosen also came in. You remember him, but he only had 2 attempts that didn't do anything. Looking at the Buccaneers defense, Ndamukong Suh had the only sack in the game, while Marlon Davidson, Dante Fowler Jr., and Deion Jones had 3 sacks, while Mike Edwards had 2 pick sixes, along with Shaquille Barrett. And Kyle Pitts, he looked like Beck. He really showed up. He was worth a top 5 pick with 5 receptions for 73 yards. Calvin Ridley caught a touchdown for 63 yards and 7 receptions. 5 receptions, 58 yards and touchdown for Cordell Patterson. The Buccaneers are still looking like the Buccaneers, and the Falcons, I feel like, are still looking like guys. Now looking at our next game, the Cowboys and the Chargers. Dak Prescott, 237 yards and an interception, while Pollard and Elliott had a touchdown each, 109 yards for Pollard and Elliott with 71 yards. CeeDee Lamb had 81 yards, but that's the only good bright spot on the wide receiving core. Herbert had 338 yards, touchdown, and 2 interceptions. Austin Eckler had 9 carries for 54 yards. Keenan Allen, 4 receptions for 108 yards. Mike Williams, 7 receptions for 91 yards and touchdown, along with Austin Eckler, who had 54 rushing yards and 61 receiving yards for 9 receptions for 9 carries each. And look at the defense. Leighton Vander Esch has sacked, along with Micah Parsons. Micah Parsons definitely looking like the defensive rookie of the year conversation so far, along with another player I'll get to sooner or later. While the DeMonte Casey and Trevon Dexter with an interception. And the Chargers, Asante Samuel had an interception. Kyle Fackrell, along with Derwin James and James Tillery, had sacks, which was great for them. And look at this, the Cowboys. Dak Prescott could still, if he can be able to get pass for touchdowns. He could be a definite comeback player of the year. With the Chargers, they were facing a good opponent element. They'll still keep their heads high, and they'll be able to continue on. Okay, guys. Now the Titans and the Seahawks. Julio Jones was worth that trade in that game. 6 receptions for 128 yards. Derrick Henry looked like his prime self for 182 yards and 3 rushing touchdowns. Kenny Hill also had 347 yards. And looking at their defense, Danico Autry, Jeffrey Simmons, and Ola Adeniyi all were available for sacks. Wilson, he had a great game with 343 yards and 2 touchdowns. Chris Carson, their rushing offense didn't do pretty much. Their receiving core did well. Tyler Lockett looking like one of the best wide receivers in the game with 8 receptions, 170 yards, 78 yards and a touchdown. Freddie Swain, 95 yards and a touchdown. DK Metcalf with 53 yards. And Bobby Wagner had 20 tackles. 20. With Quandre Diggs getting 10 tackles with a sack by Wagner. Al Woods also got a sack, and Alton Robinson did too. I mean, these were two great teams, to be honest. I mean, Wilson should still be the MVP conversation if he's able to keep this up. And the Titans, I mean, Henry can still be one of the best running backs in the league if he can still keep this up. And Julio Jones can't be worth that trade. I mean, we'll have to see how that works out. Now, for our Sunday night football game, the Chiefs and the Ravens, Lamar Jackson finally got his first win over the Chiefs. He was 0-3. Now he got his first game. He had 239 yards, a touchdown, and interception, while having 170 yards and 2 touchdowns. Tyson Williams, he had 77 yards. Latavius Murray had a rushing touchdown. Marquise Brown, 113 yards, a touchdown with 6 receptions. Looks like he can be. He could break out this season. Mark Andrews, 57 yards. And look at their defense. Odofe Away caught the game-winning fumble, along with Patrick Queen, who had 8 tackles. While our team didn't have any sacks, but they did have 3 quarterback hits. While the Chiefs, Mahomes had 343 yards, 3 touchdowns, and an interception. Travis Kelce, 109 yards and touchdown. Pringle, 63 yards and touchdown. Robinson also caught a touchdown. While Tyreek Hill only had 3 receptions for 14 yards. I mean, we did our thing. We covered Hill at all costs. So we knew what our team was supposed to do. And look at our team. Anthony Hitchens had 12 tackles. Daniel Sorensen, 10 tackles and a sack, which was the only sack in this game. Tavon Young also got interceptions for the Ravens. And Matthew got 2 interceptions. One of them came for a touchdown. I mean, this is what I'm saying. I mean, the Ravens are still playoff contenders after that game. While the Chiefs, I mean, they're still Super Bowl contenders. I mean, both teams did really well. And if they can keep this performance up, they could be, we could potentially see them in the playoffs, each other. Now, for our final game, the Packers and the Lions, I thought the Lions were going to be a surprise team and take this for the win, but turns out not. I mean, Jared Goff had 2 touchdowns and interceptions, 246 yards. He got 2 of them came from Hawkinson with 66 receiving yards and 8 receptions, 63 yards and 4 receptions to Quintez Cephas, which I haven't heard. Rodgers had 255 passing yards for 4 touchdowns. Aaron Jones, 67 yards and a touchdown, along with 3 receiving touchdowns for 48 yards. Devontae Adams, 8 receptions for 120 yards, along with a receiving touchdown by Tanya, 52 yards for 3 receptions. In their defense, Michael Brockers, Charles Harris both got sacked, and Nick Williams and Trey Flowers also shared sacks. While the only Packer to get a sack, I don't know who gets sacked enough. Devontae Campbell got an interception. I mean, I feel like the last game for the Packers was a fluke game. So, and while the Lions, I believe they were able to keep the Packers close. That's the only good thing I can say about them. I'm pretty much not going to say anything else good about them because they're the Lions and they've been rebuilding for the last 20 so years. So there's pretty much nothing else I'll have to say about them. So that was the end of the video. If you enjoyed this, make sure you like and subscribe. Make sure you follow my Instagram, Twitter down in the description below, and I'll see you guys in the next video.